Welcome to this special edition of the Coffee Break Show. It is going to be life changing and it is going to be a conversation that I have wanted to have all my life. And I'm having it with Christian de la Huerta, and we'll be right back. As you know, many of you know, I have decided to retire the Coffee Break Show at its 600th show, which is, I don't know, 5 more shows from right now. And we're going to be ending with our fan favorite, Isabel Tierney. And I have decided to end the Coffee Break Show and rebrand it, remove it, and just get it doing a different thing. So, why did I do that? Because the conversation in the world is changing, and we as people are changing. And I want to move the conversation to a more spiritual conversations that I want to have. I've done business for years and years and years and years and years, and we've talked about business at nauseum. And now there's this great awakening on the planet. There is this absolute consciousness shifting, and we have to have these conversations that we're going to have today. And today, Christian, first off, I just want to say welcome and thank you for doing this with me because it's so important in my soul. Like right now, I've been looking forward to it all week, and I'm teary eyed today thinking about doing this conversation because A, I've been afraid to do it, and B, it's such an important conversation. And C, I think everybody should be at the event that you are going to be doing because reclaiming our spirituality as human beings is one of the most important things that we could do to really benefit from our future. And the first thing I want to know, Christian, is why did you create this event? And thank you for inviting me to speak at it. I feel super privileged. And I want to know what is everything behind this event and why did you think it was important to do this?
Well, I mean, first of all, Vicky, I'm so happy to be here with you. And what an honor and a privilege it is to be having this conversation with you. Um, what inspired this conference was I wrote a book 20 years ago called "Coming Out Spiritually," which talks about how it's really tragic how many people in the LGBTQ community struggle with issues around spirituality because we confuse it with religion, and no wonder
Yeah.
given the treatment that we have received at the hands of most religions. But what's ironic and tragic and sad about that is that before the patriarchal cultures and religions, people that we today refer to as LGBTQ were not only spiritually inclined, but were actually honored, respected, revered in some cases for the roles of spiritual service and leadership that we played all over the world.
Yeah.
So it's really important internally for our community to reclaim those roles and to find ways of expressing it that are a match for who we are today. And it's also really important for the world, for humanity at
Mhm.
large. And for all of us, no matter how we express our love, it's important that we reclaim all these parts of our rejected humanity,
Yeah.
whether it's or spirituality or sexuality or any kind of other human aspect that we've tried to stick in the back of the drawer or the back of the closet or a closet somewhere.
It's so interesting how we are looking at community and looking at um, the way that we relate to one another. And I know back in, I hope I get this correct. I'm trying to do a quote that I know that I've read in one of the shaman's books and practices that I've done from years back. And you're right that back in the era, being two souled or what they call two souls, being able to understand both masculine and feminine, or yin and yang in a way, was considered spiritually advanced because I believe that it is spiritually advanced. Now, I want to say that you can be spiritually advanced and be heterosexual, homosexual, or bisexual. And that's the thing. We've gotten to the point where we think there is dysfunction in uh, our sexuality, in how we see it as a dysfunction unless we're straight. If we're straight, then there's no dysfunction. Anything other than that, it has been a long road to get to have even same-sex marriage be legal. And
Right.
the thing is, it is this it is this thought that there is a dysfunction instead of a functioning awareness that is just outside the norm. And I want to know inside the event, inside that we're going to have conversations, obviously. But what I want to know is, what can someone expect? Let's say let's say you're a parent of somebody who's gay, or somebody who has a brother or sister or cousin or uncle, and you want to understand them better, or you want what can we do if we not just open this event for gay people to go to, or the LGBTQ community, but what could happen if we just decided we wanted to understand people better? What's the thing we can do?
Yeah, and the conference, by the way, is free and it's accessible to anybody, no matter
Yeah.
how they identify. And sure, it would help to expand how they see a loved one who is LGBTQ. Because the tragic part is that the roots of homophobia lie in religion and misogyny. That's a
Mhm.
different aspect of the conversation. But the ones that are weaponized to make us wrong, to persecute us, to oppress us, to make us less than, are religiously based. And
Yeah.
we should add misunderstandings, mistranslations, of texts that were written at a time where, that were taken out of their historical and cultural context, texts that were written where women weren't even human, women were property.
That's right.
So it begins to expand, and it turns that argument that you can't, that you can't be LGBTQ and spiritual or religious upside down. That's the point of it, and that's the reason that I kinda resurfaced and organized this conference, because there is still a need for this message. Yes, in the last 20 years, same-sex marriage is now a done
Legal
deal,
in only in certain countries, but
only in certain countries. There are other countries where it's still punishable by
you
death.
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 Yeah, yeah,
And so we're nowhere near being out of the woods. And even in this country, in the US, the Equality Act hasn't even been passed. So in some places, you can still be fired or kicked out of an apartment for being who you are.
yeah,
And so when I started to see, the shootings at Club Q up the road from you in Colorado,
yeah,
Pulse in Orlando, Florida, a couple of years ago, to
yeah,
see how the anti-trans thing, the drag queen, brunches, to see the Don't Say Gay, movement in Florida, where my family's from, or where I've lived at different points in my life, I thought, "You know what? We've got to bring this topic of conversation up again."
yeah,
Because the 2 things happen. There's a youth, there's a kid somewhere listening to these news. um, Chances are good that they're gonna personalize it, that they're gonna internalize it,
yeah,
like people like you and I had to do,
yep,
and struggle with reconciling who we are in our essence with religions that we were raised in, try to find a way for ourselves. For me, my adolescence was one long depression as I try
yeah,
to reconcile this. There's a part of me who wanted to be a priest. I was raised in a Catholic environment, who wanted to serve the sacred, the divine as I understood it then, and yet being told that by this religion that I was gonna burn in hell for eternity, that I was
yeah,
anathema in the eyes of God. And I mean, talk about a mind trip to put on a kid. And
yeah,
and so the message is that not only is that a false statement, that of course you can be LGBTQ and spiritual, but that there's so much evidence historically that at a time where we didn't use those terms, but people that would probably identify at least as bisexual today, if they lived today, that there's so much evidence we played these significant spiritual roles throughout history.
Yeah, and I loved what you just said, Christian, because I know for myself, and I want to say this to all the parents, and I just want you to hear me. I'm an adult now. And one of the things that really harmed my spirituality was the thought that I didn't belong, I wasn't included, and I didn't have the right to and access to God like straight people had, because that was just how it was. And so there was a part of me that just thought something was wrong with me all my life. And there was such intense self hate at that point. There was a lot of hate around my sexuality. That was probably the thing that I had to deal with most in this world. That was painful and hurtful and just absolutely hated at that time. The hatred around sexuality is just crazy. But I want to let you know that at 5 years old, I knew I liked girls. 5 years old. Now, did that mean I wanted to be sexual with them? No. I just knew that I liked girls and that's what I liked. And it never went away. So if somebody could have told me at 5 years old what was going wrong with me, then perhaps I wouldn't have had those suicidal thoughts. Maybe I wouldn't have
Yes.
had those bouts of intense depression or secrecy or not wanting to be found out or trying to fix it because there's something wrong with me. I'm trying to fix it. So I do at risk behavior instead of healthy, normal behavior. And I think
Yes.
if your child comes to you at 5 years old, at 6 years old, at 7 years old, at 16 years old, at 20 years old, and is trying to tell you the confusion they feel inside, we should, as adults and parents, listen. Just
Yes.
listen. And I think part of that is missing right now. So, this conversation with Christian for me today about this event, yes, the event is there, but I want to look at and say for a moment, it's your moment at this event to listen in a different way, to understand what's possibly happening with your loved one. And if you are LGBTQ, here's my goal. I want to make it LGBTQS because that S says straight. LGBTQS. Now we're looking at humanity as a whole, not as a sexuality. And that's the point of going to this event and reclaiming your spirituality. So perhaps you're reading books or wondering or what therapy or how can I help my LGBTQS person, because to me we're all humanity and humanity has sexuality. And honestly, trans people are people who like to dress in more male clothing or more feminine clothing. And that's about it. They find that part of themselves. This is why these kinds of events are so important. And for me, Christian, the event that you have, the reason I said yes to you is because you are a powerful leader of spirituality, and it has nothing to do right now with your sexuality. It has a lot to do with your willingness to go deep and understand who you are, who the divine is, and what your purpose is on this planet right now. And to me, it's extraordinary what you've done and what you've created with this event. What are some of the things that they're going to be talking about at this event that both LGBTQS people can come and learn about?
Yeah, we're going to be interviewing some amazing people, yourself included.
Thank
Um,
you.
we have an actual Indian prince, like Prince Manvendra Singh Gohel. who's openly gay, as far as we know, the only openly gay prince in the world. Reverend Elder Cecilia Eggleston, who's the moderator of the Metropolitan Community Church, which is a global church that caters not exclusively but mostly to the LGBTQ community. Richard Blanco, who's Cuban American as I am, who's one of the inaugural poets, poet laureates. Kira Johnson, who's the head of the National LGBTQ Task Force. It's one of the largest grassroots activist organization in the world. Clyde Hall, who's an internationally recognized Native American authority on Native American issues and history and culture and dance and rituals. So trying to be as inclusive as possible to give that sense of we're everywhere. And I think that's one of the gifts that our community brings to the world, is that we're sort of a unifying principle. We're found in every race, in every religion, in every culture, in every continent, in ways that we cross all those boundaries.
Yeah.
And that we serve. One of the things I did in coming out spiritually is, in that book, was come up with names for the spiritual roles that we have played throughout history, and ways that really make a difference for all of us. For example, the Scout of Consciousness. And you were talking about the Two-Spirited People, which is a kind of an umbrella term that Native American people use to name people that we would otherwise call LGBTQ, because those names are pretty recent. The term homosexuality didn't exist until the late 1800s.
Wow.
And so out of the 500 or so indigenous tribes in North America, by far the great majority in the great majority of them, LGBTQ people were honored for the roles, because of what you were saying, that we blend elements of the masculine and the feminine. So we were great mediators, which is one of those 10 archetypes that I wrote about. So in the tribes, when there was a conflict between a couple, when there was a conflict between the men and the women in the tribe, we were the ones that they went to mediate, because we were thought to contain the essence, the element of both the masculine and the feminine, which I think every human being does. But maybe we do it in a greater percentage, or we express it more openly, whatever the case may be. We were also scouts of consciousness. So the role of a scout is she or he who goes ahead of the tribe to find out what's on the other side of the river, through the forest, around the mountain. It's a valuable role because we place ourselves at risk, right? The scout is leaving the safety of the village, of the group, for the sake of the group, to discover what might be going on outside. So it's a role that we have always played throughout history. So if you look at the trends in fashion and music and the arts, we're always there. We're always in starting those trends. It's a funny
right.
one of the stories that that I tell in the book is that there was one of the pride parades. I think it was in San Diego, and all the usual suspects were going by. The political organizations, the religious organizations, etc. And somebody noticed that off to the side was a straight couple with a placard saying, "Move to Highland Park," whatever their neighborhood was, because they knew that if we went there, the property values would go up, because that's kind of the way it goes. The girls go into the new neighborhoods and they make it safe, and then the boys go in and make it pretty. I'm just kidding about
Yes,
that.
it's true, but I know what you
Um,
mean.
but we're found in those boundaries, in the vanguard of things. Like if you look at the social movement, the hippie, the peace movement of the 60s was born in what was the Haight-Ashbury in San
That's
Francisco,
right.
which was then the gay neighborhood. Rachel Carson, who was a lesbian, or at least a bisexual woman, she pretty much was the mother of the environmental movement. Bayard Rustin, one of Dr. King's right hand people, and who inspired the whole nonviolent things that he got from Gandhi, and implemented into the civil rights movement. It's like he was an openly gay man. And so we're always in those boundaries, like leading the way, which is one of the reasons that, and pushing the boundaries. Like even we're talking about marriage earlier. Like I read about this stuff. I'm always educating myself and teaching about this stuff. I didn't know until recently, until some portion of our community decided that we had a right to the benefits of legal marriage. Like most of us weren't interested in that. And to me, marriage was a patriarchal institution about property rights and control of man over woman. So why would I want to be part of that patriarchal institution? Until we started getting educated and realizing that there were like over 1,000 benefits that married people have that our
that
relationships
we
didn't
don't.
have. And just by
Yeah.
virtue of some people wanting to be included in that institution, we all had to start educating about ourselves about marriage. I didn't know marriage for romantic reason wasn't around until the late 1800s.
Oh, see, I didn't know that either. That's very interesting. You know, when I was when I was in my early 30s and the woman I was with had children and I didn't bear those children, that's when I understood the rights, because I had to pay double for everything. I couldn't just buy life insurance for us, and here's the life insurance policy. I had to buy life insurance for me, then life insurance for her, then everything else with the kids. Had to have all these legal things done. When I got married to my current spouse, there were only 5 states that allowed gay marriage. So one of them was Massachusetts, which is the place I chose to get married in. And there was something so sacred about that day for me that I think there are probably maybe heterosexuals that take it for granted in a way that we don't. And when I married that day, I can still feel it in my heart. I married the person I absolutely loved the most, that I would go to the mat for. And, it's been 18 years later and I'm still happily married. And one of the things that I realized was the day felt sacred to me, not just
Mm,
because I was professing my love, but because I had the legalization of the ability to go ahead and marry, even though I didn't have all the marital status things that you get, the thousand rights, etc. There was something about that day that I think that if you're gay, you know what I mean when you're walking up that aisle and you finally have the legal right to say, yes, this is my partner, after having gone through the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s with how it was so hard to be gay and live in this world. And for me, I think the conversation that's important, Christian, is that it's the propagation of hate and misinformation and disinformation that really has the world in its perplexed state. And for me, the reason I want to change the coffee break show and rebrand it, etc., is that the conversations like these that you're having are needed. They're so needed because you're getting flooded with hate speech. You're getting flooded with political rhetoric and religious lies. There's some that are just lies. They're not. They quote stuff that isn't even in the Bible.
that's
And
right.
as we get to the point where we continue, we're either going to destroy humanity with hate or save humanity with love. And the point that this is really what's happening right now. As AI will continue, it's going to create more confusion and more hate, more uncertainty. And the only thing, if you go back to Martin Luther King, he brilliantly said, hate begets hate, anger begets anger, and love begets love. And we're literally to the point where we are either going to destroy ourselves or elevate ourselves by having the conversations that require us to choose love, to choose enlightenment, to choose to look at something and challenge how you view it, how you view it based on the possibility that you were fed an untruth. So if you take a look at slavery in the United States, slaves or black people, and still a lot right now, were so hated. It was very similar to how they hate gay people. They were so, and they were fed a bunch of lies about about black people, that until we challenged that narrative, didn't switch, that they were not able to be educated, that they were primitive in some way, that they were held to be property. It's the same with women. Women
Yes.
were held as prop until we challenged those beliefs and chose to look at it and have a different level of consciousness about
Yes.
the thing we were looking at. This is why I think the work that you're doing is so bloody important. It is so important because to you, it's challenging who you think you are, and not just from a gay perspective, but don't you want to meet who you are before you die? Because you're
Exactly.
this meat suit right now, but who are you underneath the meat suit? This is the step. And this is why I want to go. It's LGBTQS. LGBTQS. That S is straight. It's not like S is over here in the some category of sexuality that's sane and all of these others are insane. That's not true. So it's LGBTQS, and everyone, if we can challenge how we're viewing something, and the way we've talked about it before, that I want to hope to get across here, especially for trans people right now, because they are going through hell. And when you're
Mhm.
going through hell, keep on going. Eventually you'll be to the other side, but they are really being used right now by
Yeah.
media and politics to make it seem that there's something wrong in America when we're not talking about what's right in America. So, Christian, I want you to talk about, for me, just for 5 minutes, what do you think is so important, or what are like 5 things that you think are right? And I don't mean it in a political sense. I mean glorious gifts of being gay, and how media has mm, attacked it in its way. Do you understand the question I'm asking, my friend?
Sure. Sure. Like, I think you're asking what are some of the contributions? What are
Yes.
some of the ways in which we have contributed to the human experience? And that's what those
Yes.
10 archetypes are about.
Yeah.
Um,
In the book.
one of the archetypes is the gatekeeper archetype, and I got that one from a man by the name of Malidoma Somé from
I
an
love
African.
him. I love
Yes,
him. I haven't heard that name mentioned since the early 90s, but thank you.
yeah, he passed, I think, about 5 years ago.
Had
But
no
he's from the
idea.
Dagara tribe in Africa, and the
That's right.
Dagaras believe that the Earth is like a matrix of energy,
Yeah,
which we know from quantum physics that it's true. Even what feels solid, we know it's all vibration now.
that's right.
So the Earth, they see it's a matrix of energy that has certain doorways or gateways to other realms, other worlds, other reality. And in their philosophy, people that we call LGBTQ, because they don't even have a term for that, are constitutionally, energetically able to be these guardians to these other worlds, to these other realities. And he says that part of the reason that the world is in the shape that it's in is because the gatekeepers have been fired from their jobs. So for me, part of the message of this conference that it's so important not only for our community to
Yes.
reclaim these archetypal spiritual roles and ways of expressing it that are a match for who we are, because that's where our fulfillment is. It's just as impossible, as ludicrous to think that we can repress any part of who we are as humans, whether it's our sexuality or our spirituality, and feel and have a sense of wholeness, of being who we are. So for me, this message is really universal. It's for all of
Yeah.
us, no matter how we express our love. to reclaim all parts of our rejected humanity, and to come out of whatever closet, whatever ways in which we're hiding our
Yeah.
authentic selves. It's like this is the time. And what's funny about that is that there isn't anyone else out there in this universe or any other universe who has the same genetics, the same set of experiences that make each one of us unique. If we don't give expression to that uniqueness, ain't nobody else gonna do it.
I want
And
to
to me,
interrupt
that's
you
a
for a second.
universal imperative.
I want to interrupt you for a second because the example of Malidoma Somé was so important. Malidoma Somé, originally in the story, now I haven't read this since the early 90s when his book came out, and I saw him, in Boulder back in the day. But um, Malidoma Somé was kind of kidnapped from his
Yes,
tribe and
yes,
taken to a Catholic school. And
yes,
after he was there till he was 21. And what ended up happening was he went back to his tribe after, he was allowed to leave. And back then it was 21. And he was so indoctrinated. And what had happened was he did not get the tribal rites of passage that you normally get as a child. And I want to talk about that because that I think is very much missing in the world, that rites of passage that you get as a child. And so they were afraid to put him through these paces as at the it could, because he was so much older. I think it was like maybe you were 10 or 11 when you went through this rite of passage, and now he's 21, and they're thinking, well, he's too old, he's too indoctrinated, he's not going to be able to get these, rites of passage that Christian just explained what happened when he was doing this. This book is fascinating read. So what happens is they go ahead and they let him partake with these boys. They're all boys because he doesn't have the rite of passagehood into manhood until he goes through these energetic learnings. And so he goes through these sets of tribal skills, and they unlock all of the spirituality that has been blocked from him from that indoctrination that he had. And that's the world today. All of your spirituality, so much of your power, so much of your gifts, so much of everything that you are has been blocked by this indoctrination that now it's like you're born and the first thing you do is get indoctrinated. And then you spend the rest of your life trying to find who you are, or pleasure seek who you are, or run away from who you think you are without meeting who you are. And when you go to this event, one of the things that you're doing is going back to your tribe and saying, I've been indoctrinated, but give me a chance to uncover myself and
mm,
find your gifts, empower who you are, and find that thing that is your contribution to the world and yourself and your own beingness. And that's why I love that you used Malidoma Somé, because it was so perfect. We're not just religiously indoctrinated, we're scholastically indoctrinated, and we're sexually indoctrinated as well. This is good and this is bad, and you can't do this, you could do this. There are some things that just aren't true, and they need to be challenged in order for you to find the power within you to make a difference the way you know you can make a difference in your life and in the world. And that's the potency of the event that you're going to be invited to partake in. And I just want to say, Christian, this to me is about the world coming out. Not, it's
mm.
LGBTQS. There's not, S is this separate category, and then there's us, LGBTQS. And if we add that S, we can change the conversation, because now we can actually have the conversation. So
Yeah,
I wanted to interrupt you because, God, that was such a great, it was such a great, and I haven't heard that name in so long, and I love that book. But
yeah.
what I know is, when we're beginning to uncover ourselves, he brought the best LGBTQS experts from around the world to talk to you in a very deep manner and help you have the conversation, understand the conversation, participate in the conversation for free. just for free so that you can have a different perspective of you and your life and what you're capable of. And to me, if you don't have that, you have only two choices. You can continue to walk around in your pain and your lostness and your uncertainty, or you can come and be in your tribe of people and learn about the preciousness of you being who you are right now in this moment in time. And what I'm looking for, I want to just take a moment and have um, a web address that they can go to register for this event. Just blurt that right out for me.
Yes, and I wanted to also say I'm looking for the if they Google reclaiming our spiritual heritage
Hmm.
conference, they'll find it. Um,
Yes,
and I
I
will
have
look
it up
for
on my page.
you do. It's
Yeah.
I'll find it before we go, but I wanted to make a point about gender. For the women who might be listening to this. Um, because this is one of the ways in which we do serve. Like you were talking about the trans and the trans community and the role they're playing. They're the ones that being really targeted now. But why? Right? Why is that? And
Yeah.
that's because they're forcing all of us to question what you were talking about, the conditioning about gender.
Mhm.
The girls wear pink, boys
We're
wear
blue.
blue. This is what girls do. That's not what girls do. Boys, it's like all the stuff that we have made up along the way
Yeah.
about what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. And that's what the trans community is forcing all of us to
Yeah.
question, just to question.
Mhm.
And that's why it's threatening, because the powers that be, the
Mhm.
entrenched powers that be, the patriarchal powers that be, don't want that role questioned. And if you look at the cultures, the religions that persecute homosexuals, 100% correlation, they are the ones where women are less than equal.
That's right.
And so for me, misogyny, homophobia, two sides of the same coin. The deeper
Absolutely.
one is really misogyny.
Mhm.
And let's take, like one of the biblical texts that's misinterpreted to condemn homosexuality. I forget, I think it's Romans, I forget the number of the verse, but it's you shouldn't lie with a man the same way that you do with a woman. But they don't say anything about two women lying together. Why is that? First of all, women weren't even human. They were property, so they didn't really matter what they did or didn't do. But even today, like if you speak to a homophobe, two women together is like, ooh, let me see that. I want some of that. I want to be
Yeah.
part of that. Two men together is like gross. You gotta shoot them or you gotta kill them.
Yeah.
And why is that? And to me, in their mind, two women together is not a threat to the status quo, but in their mind, two men together, one of them is willingly giving up the superior male status in quotes, and that is a threat to the status quo. And
Interesting.
that's part of the reason why this gender thing is up for all of us. As women are becoming more and more empowered and reclaiming their roles, I think part of this dramatic change that we're all living through is the end of the patriarchal era. And this is, by the way, not to put men down, not to persecute men. Obviously, I like men, but it's because we can't go on this way that we have been running as a world, as a species, with the imbalance between the masculine and the feminine, where we have turned the feminine into something weakness, something that is weak, that is less than. It just doesn't work. It
Yeah.
is not sustainable. And to
Yeah.
me, the empowerment of women, the reclaiming of the sacredness of the feminine, um, and we don't want to go back to a matriarchal system. We don't want to do that. We want balance, and that balance has to start with each one of us. And the importance of that is, like, I say that the single most important thing that needs to happen in the world is the empowerment of women. And it's not to idealize women. It's not to put women up on a pedestal. It's not to give women more crap that they have to do in this planet to clean up the mess that we find ourselves in. It's because we've been running so off balance. And when women are in 50% of power, and we're nowhere near that,
That's right. That's right.
um, you
Half the
can,
firing power of this world is diminished.
seriously. And when women are
Mhm.
in reclaim their 50% of their power, we're gonna have
Yeah.
a very different relationship to war and
Yep.
poverty and hunger and social justice and education and how we treat the environment, to all of it. So to me, it's like a strategic thing. If we focus on that, then we'll impact all the other challenges that we're facing.
You are making my heart melt. I mean, really melt. Um, uh, I don't know who this is over here, but thank you for popping it up. They look like they're on LinkedIn. Thank you. This is a really important conversation for me as well. One of the future that I see that is being challenged right now, back in the 50s and early 60s, I remember when my grandmother and my mother used to tell me they couldn't go to school unless they were wearing a dress, full stop. Whether it was 40 below, whether it was 110, dress, 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 dress. And boys could only wear pants, no matter what it was. But then, there was the burning the bra and the liberation, and women suddenly were able to wear pants. And we can wear pants and dresses as much as we want. Now, nothing about being a woman has changed except our clothing. Our clothing, we went from pants and dresses. And I've been to weddings where my girlfriends who have gotten married to their husbands. They've had men in tuxedos and women in tuxedos. It's kind of a fashion thing where women in tuxedos are on both sides of the um, wedding party. And the thing that's there is we have a tendency to still say husband and wife, which I think has a property thing about it. But in the gay land, there is a lot of um, there's a lot of using the word partner and
Mhm.
partnership. And I think if we infuse that a little bit more, then we'll stop seeing each other as property or mine and actually start creating partnership, which requires us to learn to work together, know each other, honor each other, and be in that conversation. For men right now, this is going to happen, just like Bitcoin is going to happen, and it's going to be digital currency, it'll be the wave of the future. Men are going to be allowed to dress and be more feminine if that's how they feel about them without it wrecking them. And that's really what a lot of the trans people are doing. It's not about, even sex at all. It's about the right to choose the energy that clothing provides you, whether that's masculine or feminine in the moment. So, right now you can see some of the guys with skirts on and suits and a full beard and everything else, and he looks masculine and feminine. And for some reason, that threatens the narrative that you just were talking about of what we think about men should be like this and women should be like this. It's always easier for women to get their way. In that biblical thing that you were talking about, oh yeah, two women and two men. This is why this trans conversation is having such a hard point. And so we're looking at our future and saying, how can we enlighten ourselves in a way that accepts others? Because I think that you can accept the world and it projects to you what you accept about yourself, about that projection coming back to us at that point. And I just want to grab this address here and I'm going to do a little side thing. But while I'm doing this side thing, I really want you to be able to say or continue the conversation of the transformation that you see happening in this world right now as the way forward to, like, is this the only event you're going to have? Or how can people also, after the event, say, I want to know more about this. I want to be closer to my uncle, son, brother. I want to stop hating myself, because that's the first journey for a gay person. I want to
Mhm.
stop hating who I am and what I stand for. And so, how do you help people outside of this event do those things?
Yes, I've been doing transformational work for over 30 years. And I work with everybody, by the way, not just LGBTQ people. I work with a lot of women, work with a lot of men, heterosexually identified, a lot of couples who come to my retreat. So I do have coaching programs. I'm starting live retreats again
Mhm.
after the pandemic, which forced the cancellation of all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I work with on themes like relationships that work. How do we do relationships in a way that they have a chance of working? Talk about personal empowerment, because we all struggle with issues around
Mhm.
power, not just women.
Mhm.
Um, Everybody has a conflicted, ambivalent relationship to power. Part of us want it, part of us is afraid of it. And I think what we fear is that if we really stepped into all of who we are, into all of our power, that other people might
Mm.
not be able to handle it. That we might risk, relationships not working out, or that we might end up getting rejected and alone. And who wants that?
Mhm.
So it's a way of redefining our relationship to power, because we've also been conditioned that to believe that power is a bad thing. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, and who wants to be corrupted?
Yeah.
But they didn't tell us about that quote is that Lord Acton, who spoke those words, was speaking specifically about political power, not personal power, which is what we're talking about. I work with issues around purpose, like meaning. What are we here for? And how do we stop playing small? And how do we stop selling ourselves out for that illusion of security, or that false sense of security, or settling for crumbs of pseudo love? And
Yeah.
that journey that you were talking about, from self-hatred and self-denial into self-acceptance and self-love, is pretty universal. Like, for
Yes.
I think for LGBTQ people,
Yes.
it's particularly heightened
Yeah.
because of the conditioning, which in a way is an advantage that people like you and me had to start dealing with these existential questions at a very early age. I think there are questions that we all have to face at some point, like who am I and what am I here for, and what is my connection to something greater, and how do I express myself, and how do I step into my power? They're universal questions, and but I think we had to face them at a younger age. So in a way, that gives us
Mhm.
a head start. And it's the reason that we struggled in adolescence, because we were dealing
Yeah.
with adolescence is difficult for
Absolutely.
anybody.
Yeah.
But for us, there was a whole other layer of meaning and purpose and belonging, that and in secrecy. So I do facilitate that journey of, like, I know self-doubt, I know self-hatred. And these days, flash forward to today, no matter what happens in my life, no matter the circumstances, the details, relationship works out or it doesn't. A project succeeds or it fails, in quotes, never, ever, ever, ever do I question my sense of self. Like, I know who I am, and and I know my worth, as a human being. And so I can help people through that journey. I know that if that can happen in me, it can happen in anybody's life, that we all can get to those places of ultimately freedom to be all of who we are, no matter what anybody else thinks we should do or be in this world.
I want to share a story with you, and we may go a little bit over today because I think this is such a powerful and important conversation. And when we are talking about this, this is a lot of what I think gay people go through when um, we talk about the living in this world with this dichotomy going on. And I want to let everybody know, down on the screen, right on the thing, is the consciousleadersummit.com. consciousleadersummit.com. The address is going to be on the screen. I'll just leave it there for a little while longer. So wherever you are, you can just go right there, and it's free. So go do it. There's nothing different about this. I remember there was an interesting thing that I went through when I was married. The person that I was with had 2 kids. And for some reason, because there were children involved, everybody thought I was straight. And I was an accountant. I was, fresh out of college, out in the accountant world, blah, blah, blah. And I was working with a woman at this place where we had the Dilbert cubicles where they were there. And there was 2 of us here. Well, we had these big cubicles that had 4 accountants in one area, then 4 accountants, then 4 accountants, and 4 accountants. So we were kind of this hub. And there was a gal there that I loved to death. She was fun and great and everything. She was just lovely. And we would go out to lunch together and all the time when we were developing this really great friendship, this tight, close-knit friendship. And I knew that I couldn't have the conversation with her. She was Baptist. And I realized that she was so strongly Christian in her religion that if she ever found out that I was gay, our friendship would be completely over. Although she loved me as a friend, she was just all the time. So she comes into work on a Monday morning and I'm there over the weekend too. And what did you do? I did this and we had fun and blah, blah, blah. And where are we going to lunch today? And da, da, da. And I loved her too, not as sexually, just as that was my good friend. And I love her like I love you. I'm just like, she is so good. And she goes, "You would not believe what they talked about in church today." And I was like, "What was it yesterday?" So she whips out this paper and she hands it to me. And on that, it said the big gay agenda, how they're trying to, and there was this letter written about how they were trying to change our children into homosexuals, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, this is untrue. And this is a lie. So I read it with my eyes and I thought at the end of it, no wonder why these Christian people are so scared of us. Look at what their propaganda they're getting at their own church. If I received that, I'd be scared too. And so she put it back and I was thinking about it. And I asked for the paperback because I wanted to show my other friend who knew I was gay, who knew everything about me, who actually had, met my family, and who happened to be our boss. It was our boss who was. So I went and I was like, look at this. And I told her the whole thing about the church and da 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 da. And at that point, I realized that I could not continue my friendship with her if I told her who I was.
Mm.
And that broke my heart. It broke my heart in such a way. And I'm saying this because I know out there right now, there are some gay people who have gone through this exact experience where you can be friends, even though they love you, as long as they don't know what your sexual preferences are, they're fine and they love you and you're great and blah, blah, blah. And so this kind of misunderstanding, I want to add, there's this layer of propaganda that is a complete and utter lie that trans people, that LGBTQS people are also looking at. They're looking at these same kinds of lies that are out there. One of the things about the event that I think is so important is that if you want to uncover the lie that's been blocking your relationship with somebody your whole life, this is why this event is important and it's free. It's the conversation that needs to happen. And you always hear, you should hear both sides of the conversation. Now's your chance. Now's your chance to go right now to this consciousleadersummit.com and reclaim our spiritual heritage. Be there for the conversation. What if what you were told is a lie? What if when you challenge your reality, you suddenly move from self-hate to self-care and self-love? What if that happens for you? What if you get up the next morning after this event and think to yourself, I think I can overcome the lies I've been told, and I can have the deeper relationship. I can have more success. I can look in the mirror and say, you know what? You're okay and I love you. What if that happens for you? And what if Christian is the guy you're supposed to be working with afterwards to help you through that so you can unleash and unpack your potential for happiness and having a good life? This is your opportunity right now, and it's freaking free. What do you have to lose? I mean, come on. I'm going to be there. He's going to be there, and we're going to have a great time together when we do this. This is going to be a really awesome event. And um, I think that I am so grateful that you are having this event. I'm so grateful, Christian, because your heart is so loving, so kind, and you love humanity in a way that makes my heart go up in my throat. You love people the way I love people. And I think the work you do is exceptional. And if you haven't read his book yet coming out, you need to go get that. You know what I have the book over there because I read over there. And I realized that I really want to get up and get that book and go, here it is, go get it. But go to Amazon and do yourself a favor, get that book and download it and read it right now because it is so awesome and so empowering. And his perspective is so spot on in this. It's really an enjoyable read as well. And I remember telling you, I read it, I couldn't put it down. I was really grateful that you had written this work. Um, I want to ask you one last thing before we close this special edition of the Coffee Break Show. If somebody's sitting on the fence and they're thinking, God, should I go? Should I invest the time? Should I? It's free. You're investing your heart. It's free. You go. But what would you say to them if they were right now, if they're thinking and they're sitting on the fence?
Well, thank you, by the way, for the beautiful, amazing testimonial about my book. I really appreciate that. Um, and for anybody who might be interested, there's going to be something for everybody. Yes, it's focused on LGBTQ community and spirituality, but we're going to be talking about spirit in the workplace. We're going to be talking about relationships and what makes them work better. We're talking about self-expression, themes that are pretty universal. So there's going to be something of value for everyone. And what we're talking about in the way that you're framing this, which is just the willingness to question the way that we have been conditioned.
Yeah.
Maybe you go through the questioning process and ask why you believe the things you do, and maybe you land exactly where you are. At least you analyzed it, you questioned it, you were the willingness to do that work and ask, why do I believe the things that I believe? It's beautiful, powerful, transformational work.
Wow.
Rather than just buying without questioning whatever we told us because that's what our parents believed and their parents before them. It doesn't make it real. It doesn't make it true. Humanity evolves and our understanding of who we are and the world evolves. So our thinking and our beliefs should evolve as well. Along with that, as our understanding of the universe and the cosmos and our role in it continues to expand as well. And for the LGBTQ community, um, really welcome to come, because you might see yourself in a way that you hadn't seen yourself before. And if there's any part of you that is
Yes.
still struggling with this question around spirituality or feeling worthy, or if you have any remnants of feeling less than or like there's something wrong with you, like enough of that. Enough of that. It isn't real. The premises of for those beliefs aren't real. And so it could potentially change your life. And you're going to be hearing from amazing, extraordinary people like Vickie, who shares so much of her own personal story of transformation and acceptance and expressing her authentic self, which as a result of her willingness to do that, or your willingness to do that, Vickie,
Mhm.
how many lives have been touched and impacted because of your willingness to go through that harrowing process of transformation and being willing to question who you are and what you're here for. So thank you
Thank you.
for having me on the show. Thank you for your beautiful endorsement. Thank you for being part of the conference. I loved our conversation, this one
Me too.
included. And thank you for your willingness to do your own process of transformation and to share it with so many people, because that really makes an impact.
Ditto. Yeah, that really is it. You know, one of the things I want to end with is that suffering is optional.
Yes.
And the suffering here doesn't seem like it's optional, but the truth is it's optional. And if you want to get out of that suffering, whether you're straight or LGBTQ, um, whatever that is, this is the place, this is how it begins. This is what you do. You take that first step. And this first step happens to be free. The only thing that is required is your presence. That's it. And that's the beauty of what we're doing. So, what I want to be able to share with you in this last moment is that you can go to this web address right here, consciousleaderssummit.com, consciousleadersummit.com, and register for the free Reclaiming Our Spiritual Heritage week event. I mean, it's a summit. And listen to these experts from around the world and just be open. You can form your own opinion. And this is the beauty of what I am just, this is so important. I feel like for me, Christian, this has been like coming out of the closet, you know. I just really appreciate you being the person that's throwing this event that allowed me to come on this show with you and say the things that I usually don't say on the coffee break
Mm,
show. And
mm,
this has been a really a big healing for me, and I want to thank you for that.
mm,
Listen, we bring the best experts from around the world on the Coffee Break Show. And as I said before, on the 600th show, we're going to be retiring the Coffee Break Show and rebranding it for the future. So, what I want to tell you right now is take advantage of what the freebies are. You don't know if they're going to be in the next show or not. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. I just want to thank you for being you. I want to thank you for being my latest and greatest soul brother. And I will see you guys at the event. Thank you for being on the Coffee Break Show today. I'll talk to you guys later.